comes the ready or not. How you like me now? I say.
Thanks for tuning in and welcome to this week's review of Eastern Promises, starring Viggo Mortensen.
How did you get in here?
They are always open doors.
He wants the diary.
My son Kirill's mentioned many a times.
I think he was threatening to harm the baby.
If the diary should find its way to the police.
Okay, boss. You don't have to worry. Police won't find anything.
She was 14, just a child.
Forget any of this ever happened. Stay away from people like me.
But you've read the diary. How can you keep doing what you're doing?
I decide what's right and what's wrong. You can't afford to be careless in any area.
What really made me want to see this movie was a teaming up of Viggo Mortensen and director David Cronenberg, since their last collaboration created such a great movie in History of Violence, and I thought that movie was exceptional, so I figured this film would be a solid one as well. And I will tell you right now that this movie is extremely adult themed, and I wouldn't recommend this for the kiddies at all. And I also wouldn't recommend this for any sort of first date either. It's that gritty. This is actually more raw and gritty than A History of Violence, and the dialogue is good, and Viggo does a solid job as a leading man in this movie. I normally hate when people do really thick accents, but in this movie, it really doesn't take away from his performance at all. This movie is cast very well, and all the actors deliver solid performances. This is the movie's biggest strength. This movie does capture a world that most of us hopefully will never see. This is a really grimy film that touches on many subject matters that are very revolting. It also does this in a very down-to-earth and unsensationalized way. Most movies try to appear gritty, but this movie does this better than most. This movie has a share of violence, and it pulls no punches. We've all seen countless fight scenes in movies, but I can tell you one thing. You'll see a fight scene in this movie unlike any other. And let's just say, you'll see the full Monty in this one. Very realistic considering the setting, and that must have been very awkward to shoot this scene over and over, day after day. I will say that I was riveted to this movie from the very beginning, and I found the storyline to be really interesting for the first two acts. The last act is where I began to have some issues with this movie, and I felt like I was able to figure out way too much of how the story was going to play out without really even trying. And sure, this is not supposed to be a complete mystery, but I found the movie to be a little too predictable. The biggest single problem I had with this movie was I felt the story didn't wrap up really well, and when the screen went to black I was hoping there'd be more to the movie. And I don't mind leaving some things up for the audience to interpret, but sometimes you just don't feel they deliver a satisfying ending. Half the story was complete, but the other half was just left open. Another small issue I have with this movie was I missed the presence of a great antagonist in this film, like in A History of Violence. Ed Harris and William Hurt were both brilliant, and I missed the fact that this movie really didn't have that type of opposition. I know these movies aren't really meant to be compared, but when you have the same director and leading actor in a film, you can't help but somewhat refer to it. Maybe it's kind of like when people talk about Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. Someone will usually bring up the movie Snatch. They have some similarities. And even though they're really not meant to be looked at in the same discussion, once one of them is brought up, the other is sure to follow. I think knowing they have done this before and better was what made me feel like it fell a little short of what it could have been. Overall, I would say this was a pretty solid movie, but considering the people behind it and the ending being somewhat of a letdown, I couldn't give it quite the recommendation I was hoping to. And I did go out of my way to see this movie early because of the people involved in this project. Now, it wasn't a bad movie by any means, and I would recommend it to all those who like movies that have a real-life feel and don't pull any punches, because this movie doesn't. For my overall rating, I give Eastern Promises 3.5 stars.
You'll shoot your eye out, kid.
I'm giving away some great movies right now on DVD, HD DVD, and Blu-ray disc. Subscribe to my channel for more info. On my channel you see weekly videos on movie reviews, top 10 lists, and movie polls. You can also join my new movie group called Mr. Black's Movie Group. Subscribe to my channel and add me as your friend, and you'll be able to see some exclusive videos and reviews only available on my network.